At first glance, these two mice look almost the same, so then why the huge difference in price? I'm Techify and this is my comparison between the Razer Deathadder Essential and the Razer Deathadder V2. So guys, let's get into this. If you enjoy this video, then hit subscribe and join the Techify Discord and let me know if there's any comparisons you'd like to see next. Obviously in sales these could be completely different, but right now the Deathadder V2 is about $40 and the Deathadder Essential is half that at $20. And it's not immediately obvious what the differences are. I recently did a new review of the Razer Deathadder Essential as it's been updated from the version I had back in 2020, so this video will be based on that newer version, which is quite a lot better than the old one. So jumping right into it, it'll probably be quite a short comparison because the shape is identical. There should be absolutely no differences in the shape, and if there are any differences I don't know about, they're going to be very, very minor and not affect your performance or anything in any way. On the website, these mice might look really similar, but actually when you get them side by side, it is immediately obvious the differences. The Deathadder V2 just straight away feels better in general, and there are a few reasons for that. So first of all, the coating on the mouse is much nicer on the Deathadder V2. It's quite a glossy, you kind of get sweaty with the Deathadder Essential. It just feels a little bit cheaper, whereas the one on the Deathadder V2 is a bit grippier and just a bit nicer in general. Similarly, you get these nice rubber sides on the Deathadder V2 versus this kind of just plastic grip on the Essential. These feel much nicer and do really make the mouse more comfortable and more of a pleasure to use for a long period of time. As soon as you pick both these mice up, you straight away notice the next difference, which is the weight. The Deathadder Essential is heavier at around 100 grams, whereas the Deathadder V2 is lighter at 80 grams. Considering it is such a big mouse, that doesn't feel too bad, and actually this mouse just feels so much lighter, more agile, and is nicer to use in my opinion than the Deathadder Essential. Another visual difference is the extra 2 buttons on the Deathadder V2. Personally, I set my DPI once and then don't really change it. That being said, having no ability to change it at all on the mouse is actually a little bit annoying, and for some people could be a big deal. You have to do it in Razer's software only. Along with that, you obviously get RGB on the Deathadder V2, whereas you don't, it's only green on the Deathadder Essential. Depending on your setup, the green could look a bit out of place, but from a performance point, that doesn't really matter. The next difference you can see is the cable. So you just get a standard rubber cable on the Deathadder Essential, but you get Razer's nicer flexible cable on the Deathadder V2. It's a nicer feeling cable. I'd say it's a little bit more flexible and doesn't hold its shape as much overall. So that is going to be nicer when you're gaming, especially if you don't have a mouse bungee, but even if you do, that's just going to give you a bit less drag and make your aiming more consistent. Following on from that, the feet on the Deathadder Essential have been a big upgrade since the older version, but they're still not quite as good as the ones on the Deathadder V2. Despite their appearance, I think they are slightly different in material. You can feel the extra smoothness and control you have with the V2 over the Essential. These just feel slightly, I'd say, maybe rougher and not as smooth and nice as the ones on the V2. I think the extra weight reduction on the V2 also helps with that. I must say the clicks on the Deathadder V2 also feel noticeably better. They're a lot more snappy and there's a lot less pre-travel. There is a bit of post-travel on both, but it isn't too bad. It's not something I've noticed that much, and I'd say it's slightly worse on the Essential. The clicks in the Deathadder V2 are going to use Razer's optical switches, which are supposedly faster. It's not something I'm able to test myself, but there are plenty of websites out there that have tested the click latency, and it's significantly more on the Deathadder Essential. That being said though, in all honesty, it's not something I notice in game, especially as somebody who plays multiplayer games when you may have a ping of 30 or 40 milliseconds. A few milliseconds difference on click latency isn't something I tend to notice all that much. For the scroll wheel and side buttons, there isn't that big of a difference. They're pretty much in the same place. They once again obviously do feel a bit nicer and more premium on the Deathadder V2. The scroll wheel especially I think feels nicer and has more predefined steps on the V2. That being said though, I don't think there's a big enough difference that is actually going to affect how well you play in game. I think it's just more going to be a feel thing. Now the thing that will affect your performance is the sensor. So the Deathadder V2 has a generally better sensor with up to 20,000 DPI versus the sensor in the Deathadder Essential, which has up to 6,400. The Essential also has a higher lift-off distance of around 7 playing cards versus 5 on the Deathadder V2, and you want that lower lift-off distance so when you're readjusting your mouse in game, when you reach the end of your mouse pad or whatever, you don't get any unexpected movements in game. Ultimately, every aspect of the Deathadder V2 is a little bit better. If you can fit it within your budget, then I think it's definitely worth the extra money. So if you've watched this video and you've got really concerned that the Deathadder Essential is really bad because I've said everything is worse, Yes, it is worse than the Deathadder V2, but that is double the price. This is still a good budget mouse. If you like the shape, then I think it's a perfectly good option if this is what's within your budget. So as a final verdict, I think it depends on your budget and how long you plan to keep the mouse. If you plan to keep the mouse a very long time, it really is worth the extra money for the Deathadder V2 if you can fit it in your budget. Especially if you're watching this video around a Black Friday or Christmas sale and this mouse is down in price, then it's definitely worth the extra money over the Essential. That being said, if you're not too sure on the shape or you're going to only keep the mouse for a small amount of time, then the Deathadder Essential will do the job. So if the Deathadder V2 is completely out of budget, then just go ahead and buy the Deathadder Essential. That being said, I do urge you to check out some of my other videos and comparisons. For a lot of people, something like the Razer Viper Mini will actually be a better shape and a better value for money mouse. Hopefully you guys find this video helpful, and if you did, then make sure you subscribe to my channel. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.